Okay, kia ora koutou, everyone. We're all good. Nice work. Hey, so welcome back after lunch, and well done, Vicky and team, for getting through the strategy and policy meeting. I know we're a little bit late here, but all good. And I know, Taff, you got to introduce a new person for us. I know Dave, so kia ora, Dave. Welcome here, but I'll hand over to you to introduce Dave.
Kia ora, thank you, Craig, and welcome back, councillors. I don't think I've seen many of you since the beginning of the year. And I think we are short of time, aren't we, Craig? Are we trying to still finish at 2:00? Yeah, we're still aiming for...
There is another meeting that some of us have got at 2:15, okay. So around then's going to be good, but if it goes to 10 past, that might be okay. Yep.
Okay.
Some of us are getting, I think 7 or so of us are going to have to depart at 2:15 or just before that. So, thank you.
Cool, thank you. So we've structured it so that we can get to the bit that we need some further guidance on first up. But I'm going to introduce you to Dave Mills, who's our GM of Finance and Assurance. So Dave will have all of the financial answers, but has been here for 5 minutes, and so has had to get his head in the game on this one. So go easy on him with the questions. So basically the purpose of today's briefing is to recap where we got to on the annual plan stuff last year and the fees and charges. So we're sort of at the pointy end of preparing for consultation, which is why you've got me and not Katie or others just doing today's briefing. What we want to do is recap where we got to with the consents, fees and charges, and talk to you a bit about an agreed approach to consultation. So that's the bit we want to spend a bit of time on at the beginning. Recap the public transport pieces for the annual plan, and there's a few changes in that space as well, and Sonia's going to go through that. And then just broadly the consultation approach, and then at the end we do need a bit of time just to talk you through how to give us some feedback on the consultation document so that we can keep that process moving. At the back of the pack, there's some financial information too that's been shared with you today. So just sort of backtracking a little bit to last year, and hopefully you can all remember this as well as I can. It seems like a long time ago now. For the annual plan, we started off with the basis that we were looking at year 2 of the long-term plan. So basically there is, nothing really changing apart from public transport, which obviously there was a difference in government or central government funding for that. So we've got some changes and then some other ideas to put to different parts of the community. Running in parallel with the annual plan is the consents, fees and charges conversation with the community. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but it was just a reminder that that's not in the annual plan. Remember, we pulled it out of the LTP, the fees and charges schedule. We need to consult on it under the RMA. That points us to the LGA. We have to do a consultation around the fees and charges. So we're doing them at the same time for cost purposes and to reach the community with one conversation. So annual plan, starting point was the 15.1% rate, a 15.5% rates increase, which was year 2. With the PT changes and some other changes we've put forward, it's now looking at a 9.1 total rates revenue increase. And I know councillors are well aware that that'll be a little bit different depending on which rating area we're in. And then this last bit is just referring to the fact that we have been having ongoing conversations, and you're well aware of all the changes been coming that will continue to come. So some of this will be a bit fluid as well as we go through the year, but we obviously have this point in time with the annual plan that we need to hit.
Taff, I've just got a question from Councillor Korako.
Yep.
Kia ora, tēnā kōrua. Is this a good time, during this briefing paper, to perhaps foreshadow a couple of things that we might want to include?
If we could do that at the end, then that would be a good conversation for councillors to have if there's time. Right. So we're going to start with the fees and charges piece. So we're going to just step you through our thoughts around the consultation on this. So just starting with the bit of the recap. So you recall there were 3 sort of broadly different areas that we want to consult on. Simplifying the deposit structure for the resource consent applications, adjusting the dollar amounts for some of the fixed fees and deposits for specific activities. Some will be going up, some down, and some becoming deposits. And then this increase in the hourly charges for staff time, with a view to getting the user pays percentage back into the policy bracket of 60 to 80% user pays, the remainder from general rates. So there's 2 sort of components to that, and that's the bit we want to spend just a little bit of time on today. And so we've got the financial information, as I say, at the end, that is not in the slide pack, just to enable us to flow the consultation conversation with you. So overview of the consultation information, obviously to give councillors some useful information when making your decisions. It identifies who is affected, service users or ratepayers, so that you've got some guidance and some context, if you like, of the feedback that you're getting from the community. And we're just asking a simple question on that. Do you use our services or not? Yes or no, so that we know who it is that you're hearing from. So when you get that information back after the consultation closes, we'll be able to break it down to these different groups so that you've got some context for what you're hearing. In the consultation material, we're looking to, obviously we'll talk about what we're doing, the simplified deposit structure being proposed, adjustment to the fees, the changes to the hourly rates, noting that there is no additional rates impact for this coming year in terms of rates increase for the deposit structure changes and the fixed fees and things changes, but that if, depending on where council goes today and the guidance you give us today, there could be a further impact on how we're using general rates in a shortfall. So we'll get to that piece in a minute. Councillor Mackay, I wasn't sure if you had a question.
No, got a question from
point? Yep.
Claire and John. Claire, no.
We might be the same, John and I. Can we just use some plain language in that question, please?
Sorry, for example, yep.
If we have to put something in brackets, if we have to put something in brackets, we're also acknowledging it's not plain language. So can we just perhaps, do you have a current resource consent?
Yeah.
Or are you a current resource consent holder or anticipating to be, or something to that effect? I think while we might be trying to be PC and correct by using resource management services, let's use plain language. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? Carry on. Yep. Carry on.
Right, with the easy bit done first. So these two parts, the fixed fees and the deposit structure, relatively simple questions that we're proposing simplified to simplify the current deposit structure, taking it from 19 different deposits down to these 4 brackets, and simply asking, do you support this, yes or no? And then, do you support the proposed adjustments to fixed fees and deposits? Now, connected to this, obviously, will be much more detailed information about what we're proposing, including tables of actual dollar amounts in here. And there will also be a free text box in the submission form, so people can add any context that they want to add into that as to why they may be saying yes or no. Yeah. So when we bring it back to you, we'll be able to bring you back the numbers around who said yes, who said no in the different groups, but also then we'll be doing some analysis on that, the free text, so we can tell you what else people were saying about this.
Wait, Dan. Sorry.
Just a question really on this. Where you've got separate consents, but they're all linked to the one activity, is the scope to do that under the single consent deposit, or are you going to get into the large deposits? And I'm thinking of taking use for an example, but let's say if you're taking groundwater and putting it into a creek, and that involves, I think, 3 consents for one activity effectively. So an example like that is, that would still have to come under the 10,000, or is there discretion to say this is actually effectively one activity and therefore one consent?
Yep.
Hello, councillors. Yeah, there is discretion as the simple answer for that. So generally where we get an application comes in that may trigger several different of this consent requirements for the same activity, which is the example that you used, we can bundle that into one fee, but it's more to address the wider range of activities that might come in one application. Where they might have an air discharge, a wastewater discharge, and some earthworks going on, which requires a lot more assessment.
Kia ora, Aurora. In the residential on-site wastewater system consent, so 3,500, is that actually is that just for one household, or is it actually for? So, my question is actually related to Papakainga, and so, for instance, you could have 4 houses actually on one section. How does the consenting costs actually? What does that cover? I know there's been a number of discussions actually with councils, district councils, and also city council around development fees, for instance. With Papakainga, I know that this whole Papakainga discussion is an ongoing one. It'd be good to actually try and nail a few things around it.
I won't get too much into development phase because it's way outside of my wheelhouse, but for large subdivisions, they generally trigger other needs for other consents. Papakainga, some developments would fall into that space, others would be able to go through the residential fee for on-site wastewater. It really depends on the size of the proposal and if they're triggering the need for additional activities. So if they require just us to do their wastewater consent in one go, then it would fall in that 3,500 for an on-site wastewater. When any proposal starts getting more activities, that's when we look at the additional fees.
But there's always, sure, you can have a Papakainga in an urban development. I mean, if you've got a Papakainga on a Māori reserve, well, then you've got a different classification again. So are you saying then that it's kind of horses for courses because of the fact, and I take your point about not going too deep, but at least this briefing is actually about, trying to simplify things. So it'd be really good to simplify Papakainga, because it's not going to go away, actually. It's going to get, there are going to be more and more people coming to do Papakainga because of all of these new, around spatial plan, about size of houses that not needing consents and all that sort of thing, building consents. Let's just foreshadow that then, because I know this is not the time to have the discussion, but I'm saying that we really need to concentrate and think about Papakainga.
Claire?
Just question of clarification. You just talked about, what was the word you used? Some optionality about whether you, the size of, how you looked at different consents. The word will come to me in a minute. Discretionary, discretion. It's called current deposit, initial fixed fee. Is there discretion there if an application came in very well done, for example, a single consent, and it turned out that the work involved was only 3,000? Is there discretion? Yes, thank you.
Grant?
I was just wondering that the answers that people have to give are fairly blunt, yes or no. Is there? Do you in a question like that? Do you put another box that says comment or?
Yeah, there'll be a free form box that people can fill in on the submission form to add anything else that they want to add, which will give more context and a bit of richness to the information we bring back to councillors. Yeah.
Do we need to continue this stuff, people?
Really,
Okay,
it's
cool.
the last question asks whether it's support fixed fees and deposits, and 3 of those are for deposits and only 1 for fixed fee. Is that right? Is it? Are we going to muddle question a bit by leading people to think that the 3 deposits might be fixed fees as opposed to deposits? Should they be?
Sorry.
Should fixed fees be split out?
There is additional context with this. So this is the questions that will be in the submission form, but there's additional context with a table that actually tells you what they are. Yeah. So we anticipate some people might say yes to this one, no to this one. Yeah, that's the information that we'll be able to bring back to councillors. What we don't want to do is have multiple questions. It makes it really difficult for you. Then you'll be considering 27% of people liked this particular one line here, and yeah, there'll be a lot of detail for you if we start splitting things out one by one.
Yeah, I guess my concern would be if people read this and focus on the fixed fee and then think that, let's say, $7,500 for 2 consents was the fixed fee rather than just the deposit.
Sorry, there's two. These are two separate parts. So we've got 3 bits, and these are 2 of them that we're asking. One is the deposit structure. The second part down the bottom is around the actual dollar amounts on some of the fixed fees and deposits. So there'll be 2 separate explanations, and it'll be split out. Yeah, so it's not part of the same thing. Sorry, yeah, I understand what you're saying now. Yeah.
I take Ian's point on that particular question at the top. I mean, does it need initial fixed fee in that sentence? In that particular question? Because I do take the point that it could be confusing because they actually mean like 2 completely different things, don't they? Yeah. So just might be simpler to take it out of that sentence when we're going, we just want to get it down to 4 deposit types.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
it. Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, and we'll in our explanatory text, we'll make sure it's really clear the difference between a deposit and a fixed fee. Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Genevieve? All good? Cool. Okay, let's continue.
Right, that was the relatively easy bit. So just on to the hourly rates then. So when we came to you before Christmas, we talked about a 14.1% average increase and a 4.7% average increase in hourly rates, which I think we probably jumped straight into the detail with councillors. So when we were framing up the consultation, we needed to lift this up a little bit. So this was really just a reminder then of the context. So what the problem we're trying to solve, if you like, is the fact that because of the legacy issues and the Sustainable Consents Delivery Project, and we've sort of lost our ground a little bit in terms of our stated policy range of 60 to 80% of the consenting service costs being met by user pays. Currently sitting at around about 56%. And the point of increasing the hourly rates was to jump us back up, to play catch up, if you like, to where we wanted to be within that policy range. So in the LTP, year 2, we'd put in that we wanted to be back at 66%, so back into the bottom of the range, and that would require around about 14.1% average increase in those hourly rates. Now, when we brought that to you before Christmas, I think there was some mixed feelings around the table about whether going in one jump to catch us back up was appropriate or whether there was perhaps a more staged jump, steps to get us back up again, so into range. So staff went away and mapped in, could we do this over 2 or 3 years? So looking at a 4.7% increase for year 1, which would get us just shy of being in the bottom of the range, but would potentially be more palatable for users of the service and to pay for, recognising that then the shortfall, of course, is still being met from general rates. So there's a tension here between what user pays component and what would be a reasonable uplift and what the general rate payer could potentially be covering. So that was sort of the context of it. And I think we probably didn't talk so much before Christmas around the policy range of 60 to 80, and we sort of talked more around this 14.1 or 4.7 options. We did obviously present both options, and we then went to look at how do we consult with the community on these 2 options, recognising that there are limited, avenues to us to address any shortfall. We've got general rates reserve, but obviously that has an impact down the track in terms of replenishing those reserves, recognising that, and Dave will probably know what the numbers look like at the moment, and they're not great. But then also using in-year savings. So if we don't do the 14.1, we're now behind where we thought we would be in year 2. So basically, when we were looking at the consultation, we were ending up looking at putting the 2 options out and saying to the community, users, would you like to pay a little bit more this year? We jump up 4.7 on average, or a lot more this year. And we were saying to general rate payers, would you like to subsidise by a bit or a lot? So, I think councillors already know the answers to those questions. So we felt that if we took those questions to the community, you would have nothing that you don't already know. You could probably guess how most people were going to go with those things. So from our point of view, we thought actually that will then become slightly meaningless consultation. Under the RMA, we have to consult, as I said, under the LGA. Under the LGA, we need to do a special consultative procedure, and that means we can simply put out a statement of proposal from council. So what we've done is we've actually, based on what we thought we heard more of before Christmas, and this is the opportunity to tell us if we got that wrong, we've put in a statement of proposal, a draft statement of proposal into the consultation document, at the moment looking at the 4.7%. So that means that each year there's going to have to be sort of an equivalent, similar size increase to get us back into the around the 66%. Recognizing each year with inflation, you're playing a little bit more catch up to get us back into the policy range. So 4.7 would get us to the just outside the bottom of it. And council obviously has set that range for a reason as to what is fair. User pays to general rate. So we're trying to get back in, but we've picked up the staged rather than the one step up jump. Now that comes with consequences, obviously. So just wanted to cover off what that might look like. So say we're now saying, should we just go out and test with the community this one based on the 4.7 will get you into 59%, not 66, and it assumes some further increases. There are implications of this. So a 4.7 would result in a budget deficit of 1.6 million in the 2025-26 year. If you went with the 14.1, that would be what we set the budget at. So that would be just looking at that 9.1 proposed increase, that would be in that. If you want to go with the lower one on the hourly charge out rates, then you're looking at about a 1.6 million that we would have to find somehow in year. And either we're using more general reserves, and say Dave can probably speak better to whether that's an option, or we're looking at some things that we don't do, that we're finding 1.6 million in savings of programs of work that we just simply don't do because that money wouldn't be there anymore because it would be subsidizing this way. There are pros and cons. So we mapped in the 4.7, and that is not, just to be clear, necessarily staff advice. We simply took what we thought we heard before Christmas as the more palatable option, and there are pros and cons of that, as you're hearing. Yeah, you know, I mean, going out with a 14.1 average increase is not going to be well received by the users of the services. Going out with the lower one might not be well received with your general ratepayers. So I just wanted to come back to these two questions, because this in a sec is where we're heading with this, is that we're going to need this guidance today from you so that we can finalise the consultation. So, and just that fourth bullet down, regardless of which option you choose, there are going to need to be further increases because both of them get you either just shy or just into the range. So we are going to need to keep increasing either way. It's a question of how and what might be the most palatable way to do that. So,
and I'll get to everybody. I've got Vicky, Claire, Peter, Grant, and John so far. David, nearly everyone probably wants to have a go at this one. But I'm going to kick it off.
I think I've got one slide which
Yeah.
would be framing up how.
I've read it, but yeah, Karen, Wager, yep.
Shall I do that one first, and then because we yeah. So basically, if we went with this single proposal rather than options, which we are able to do if council wants to agree on one now, there would be the supporting narrative. What does it mean for the people paying? What does it mean for the general ratepayer? And the question would be along the lines of, do you support this stepped increase over time with a corresponding stepped reduction in general rates to support to cover the shortfall, to achieve the policy target? And then again, that freeform box, regardless of actually whether you say no, that freeform box will be there. What would you propose that we would do differently? So relatively simple question, but there's quite a lot of supporting material that will be sitting behind that. So, and then this is the bit we need to land. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, so because I know Dion and I spoke to Giles and Catherine briefly about this last week, and at that time we were still looking at two options, and I think we were comfortable with doing the two options because when we did discuss this late last year, it was pretty evenly split in terms of some people wanted the 4.7, some people thought it was more prudent to do the 14.1, so we sort of left it with you guys, yep. But when Dion and I spoke to Catherine and Giles the other day, we were like, the way it was explained to us, and this is for other councillors, is that if you change it into a question about meeting our target in the LTP, which is the 66% target, you're giving people a choice to say, do you want us to still meet that target? If so, this is the level of increase that's required in this year to meet that. Or if you only want to, if you want to meet that in time, here's what you do. And I thought that, and I think Dion agreed, that we thought that sounded better. Give people the choice. They're not dumb. They can see that if we want to meet the target that we've agreed in the LTP, which is our contract with the community, then that's what it takes to get to there if we do it this year. But if the community give us that feedback and say we're happy for that target to be amended and to reach it over a transition step, noting what the changes would be in each year to get to it, I think that's a better way to treat our community and say, you decide, you have to give us the guidance, and then we'll have a much better bit of information to help us decide what to do. That's the way I think. I'm Dion, I'm happy if you want to jump in, because that's what I thought we were going to do. So I'm surprised to see it like this today. And I don't know how the councillors feel, but is that sort of how people generally feel we should do it?
I mean, just on that, the rationale from the staff point of view was around just what will you get meaningful feedback from that, or will you get users of the service saying take the step and general ratepayers saying don't, which is essentially what councils
we're
have
not
already
gonna
got
know
to
unless we
yourself. So
ask.
it was more.
But that's my point.
Yeah.
Like, you could assume that people will go, oh, yeah, I want the cheapest option, but you can't assume that. We cannot assume it. If it's spelled out clearly that we want to reach this target of a user pays, because as you can see from a general ratepayer perspective, that's important. From a user perspective, of course, the reverse is important. So, but we need to get that data and information in to help us, rather than just give one option and then it's like, okay, well, cool, we can only base it on one option, unless we get alternative feedback to that option, which, as you know, on a tick box thing, probably might not happen. But I don't know. I still think the two options is important, but happy to open it up. Yep, for sure. Yep.
So, did I hear correctly that there's two options around, one being a consultation around it, which would be two options, versus going out with a proposal would be treated quite differently. Is that correct?
Going out with a proposal would still be consultation. So under the RMA, we have to do a special consultative procedure around fees and charges. So we would do that under the LGA. So that's where it points us to, and that gives us our guidance. There are two options of how to consult. If you're going out on something like fees and charges schedule, you can put out a proposal, and you put out your statement of proposal, and there are things we have to outline, including the draft fees and charges schedule, and we ask for feedback. So with that consultation, we can say our council's proposal is that we go with, we jump straight to 66, and that looks like 14.1% average. If we didn't do that, here are some other figures. This is what it would look like. So we can still provide other information, but we're not overtly saying, do you want A or B? We're saying council thinks A is the right option. We welcome any feedback that you want to give us. It is a different approach. So if for the annual plan, we're meant to give options, where council is saying what the preferred one is, but that you're open to any of them. Whereas this is saying, actually, this is our statement. We've got a policy setting. This is where we're heading. Or we've got a policy setting and we're comfortable with not getting there until 2 years down the track. So council's making the decision and sharing that decision and asking for feedback versus council's open to any decision still and bringing it back in. So that's what we're asking here is, have you got a preferred position, and do you think anything to be gained from putting the two options out to the community versus one and feedback?
And I think if we were able to have voted on a proposal, then we'd have a clear answer. But because of the way we have to do this process, we don't get to vote on it. So we gave you feedback that we could at the time, which was pretty evenly split. I didn't ask for a show of hands. I could do that now, of course, but it's a bit tricky because have we got the full information we need? Don't know. That's why the safest thing, I thought, and I think when we met with Dion, was put both of them in there. We have to. There's no other option we've got at the moment. And I think that's the safest way for the 25th of February meeting, because when we get to that meeting, we have to decide what to do. And that's the day we get to vote on things. And we could vote that day to change that. But you have to prepare the document. I get it. So I think it's safest to put both in there at the moment. And then on the 25th of February, if we decide that we're only going to go with one because we could do a separate vote on that, you can take the other bit out. But I think if you see what I mean, exactly, it's tough for all of us. So I'm just trying to be reasonable here. That's why I think both is important, because I don't know if we have got a majority one way or the other on this. And, one of our members isn't here today. So I don't really want to go to the show of hands thing. We could, but you see what I mean? So I think I'm happy to open that up, because I just think the safest way is to put both proposals in, let our community tell us what they think about reaching a target that we've previously agreed by raising the money, or just doing it over time. I think it's a pretty simple question in my opinion, but I know it's complicated to explain, but yeah. John?
I know I'm a bit out of order here, but if we have a policy that states we shall reach that percentage, do we need to then go out and consult to ask permission again to do what we already have on the books as the percentage we want to get to? And that's the question on my mind, and therefore why I might just back going, this is our option because we have a policy on the books and that is where we need to get to and explain ourselves. That's just a simple view there.
Well, no, we don't. I don't think we do, but I think we should. And my perspective was, if we were voting on it right now, I'd be voting for the 14.1% one. I'd be voting to reach the target that we've agreed. That's what I would do. But I think we should give the community that option to tell us what they think about that. Ultimately, we do get to decide. So, cool, we'll get that moment. But we need the data to help us do that, and the feedback. So on my list earlier on, I had Vicky, Claire, Peter. Do you guys still want to speak?
Yep.
Okay, so Vicky, where you go?
Emma.
I would really be resistant to having something came out saying our council position is that we think 4.7, because I definitely would struggle to, obviously wait and hear the submissions come back, but I feel like the reason it needs such a big step up is because the general ratepayers have been subsidising consenting for a number of years now. We know through the submission we done this morning that there are some angles in CME where consent monitoring and enforcement is paid for through general rates as well. So, and yet it's generally for personal benefit is why you put consents in, or it's done by councils and the like, in which case it's still the same ratepayers paying whatever our fees are. I think it has to either go out as two options, or we go, I would say, with the 14.1 as our proposal and then go from there. But I can live with two if we need to.
Yep, Taff.
If just to remind as well, councillors, that if we are doing options, we're going to need a preferred option, if you like, from council. So we'll just need to get a steer on where you're heading, but I'll probably get that from when you're going round a little bit here. So yeah,
I don't know if we're going to get that, Taff, because we haven't been able to vote on it. If we can vote on it in a formal meeting, then we can do that, because I think it's going to be pretty evenly split, and with one person away today, it'll sway that way, but I don't think that's the decision of council. I don't know. I do not know. But this is not the forum to vote on things.
no,
Is
it's
it?
not. And it's more like, I guess, the PT and things that you gave us before Christmas. It's guidance from councillors. Your voting will be at the end of the month. Obviously, the more guidance we can get with certainty, the better, because we then pivot right at the end. If we have to change documents, that makes it very difficult for us to meet the consultation time, as you've already said. So it's just getting a steer if we're going with one or the other as a lead, if you like. So yeah, it's
Okay, well,
just
let's
flagging
go
that
around the
with you.
table and do it now. So tell me whether you want 14.1 or 4.7. Okay, cool. But we'll be here for a while just so everyone knows. Okay, so Claire.
I have a question to ask for clarity around how it's been put into our long-term plan, and thinking about how we increase that percentage of cost recovery. At the 4.7, it brings it up to 59, which is 1% under our revenue and treasury policy, or whatever it's called. The range there now, so that to me seems quite reasonable. But if the organisation keeps going on improving the efficiency in the consents delivery department, is it fair to say that those costs will come down, therefore there would be an alternative increase in user pay share?
Look, that will come into the mix. I can't tell you the proportion that would be. I'm suspecting the revenue side will be a bigger number, though, than the cost efficiencies is what you're referring to.
Supplementary, so you're suggesting that we can't pull another 1.3 million out of cost efficiencies and planning, given that I thought we were told that this wasn't going to affect the 25-26 season or year, this increase in change. Is that correct?
I mean, the increase in charge out rates would impact users in 2025-26. It's more the rates impact. If you went with the 14.1, there would be no need to increase the general rates to offset anymore because that's included in the budget. If we went with 4.7, then we're 1.6 million off where we would need to be. So either we would have to put that onto rates, and nobody's suggesting that we would increase the rates by that 1.6 million. We would therefore need to offset it some other way, which means we'd have to just reduce some other programs in year on that. Or efficiencies. Yeah, but that's, yeah.
Thanks, Claire. You good? Peter.
Look, pretty simple for me. I know we're not going to vote, but I don't want anything that we do to have any impact on general rates at all. I mean, the rates number is the number that we're going to be valued on, and so that's the way I would see it. I think you can consult the way you need to consult, but in spite of any consultation and any empirical evidence that we get from the consultation, my vote will be against increasing rates. So that's why I'm Craig.
Grant.
I'm with John, really. I think we should just go with a single proposal at 14.1%. We cannot continue to increase our general reserves or add to the deficits on our general reserves in 1.6 million. This is about user pays. There's some benefit from somebody who is using a consent or whatever. They pay, not general users. So, yeah, we just got to keep it simple.
Thanks, Grant. John.
Thank you. I'm not sure we sort of are on the same wavelength. I know within the conversations we had prior to Christmas around these matters, I have no difficulty with those applying for consents to pay a fair and reasonable cost. And if we can further optimise our processes, then we will minimise those costs over time. And so I guess I am uncomfortable. I'm comfortable in a personal sense with a 4.7, uncomfortable, I guess, with a 14.1, and would like to see something, a two-step, something in the middle that might provide a step through, because I am equally with Councillor Scott on I don't want to see rates increased and have a whole debate about those things. So somewhere in the middle, getting us closer to the figure that we need to be, and minimising any effect on rates, because there is an advantage for those users. And guess that the caveat is that we need to further improve our efficiency in our processing and reduce our costs over time. But otherwise, if it's fair and reasonable, we, the consumers who do have those consents, in my mind, should be paying for at least 70 or 80% of it.
Thanks, John. David.
Yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged sword here. I like John's, Councillor Sunkel's analogy earlier that, we've set a policy to have 60 to 80% recovery from user pays. And correspondingly, we need to see improvements in our processing of consents. So I would like to see something a little bit more back on the other end of the scale, saying it's all very well saying to the users, well, we're going to increase our cost recovery to X, but we also need a policy that says we need to be reducing our staff time in analysing our consents, which in turn probably leads to the ultimate sort of scenario of getting consents received in a manner that they just flow through the system. Now, that to me is probably the ultimate. We need a process that when we receive a consent, it is basically a standard, straightforward process to work it through. So often I've seen in my time in local government, I'm not saying this particular organisation, we receive a consent, the applicant's told, well, it doesn't comply in this area, and this area, go away, come back, and when it does, we'll deal with it. We need to be evolving a culture where our consenting process receives applications that are virtually 90 to 95% done and dusted. And so I want to see some sort of process around that. We can't keep whacking our applicants for more and more time. We need our staff to be working more efficiently on it, but equally we need applications that come in that are of a standard that they can be processed in the organisation in a timely manner. So there's three things there that need to be worked in conjunction. We raise our cost recovery. We improve our efficiency internally in terms of how we process our consents, and thirdly, we make sure that the consent application process is refined such that we are receiving quality consent applications that are not going to waste a lot of our time.
Thanks, David. Nick?
I concur with what David or Councillor East has just said, and Councillor Mackay and Councillor Sacknell. But also some irrigators the other day who've just spent north of $100,000 each on engaging consultants to prepare their consent. So they have incurred a huge cost before that application even arrives at this building. To then be told that that's going to cost another 14.1% to process is it's a big cost, and then they're only getting a consent for a short number of years. So it's a real catch-22 situation. We need, if you're going to spend $100,000 getting a consultant, you need a consent that's for 10 years plus. So it's a real chicken and egg, and dog chasing the tail. So I'll leave it at that. More of a comment than a question.
Thanks, Nick. Ian?
Yeah, I think Claire, Nick and David, and to a degree John have already said what I wanted to say, but what I don't want to do is encourage a cost-plus mentality, and saying that we need 14% to bridge the gap just sounds like exactly that. We're a cost-plus mentality. If we can't meet our costs, we'll just put up the revenue stream. We need to be putting our consenting team on a degree of burning platform so that they actually can work out how to process consents cheaply, efficiently, and quickly. And if you break it down to every consent is going to cost this much to the general ratepayer, and you work out how to save that cost, then you get that 1.6 million down to hopefully not much. And I guess the trouble is, as a constituent representing a constituency, we only hear from people who've had an issue with consent application processes. And some of the horrendous blowouts and cost are quite frightening. And I admit that we don't hear all the ones that go through without an issue. But certainly you don't want to incentivise the behaviour which allows that cost blowout in consent applications, whether it's better application of the consents in the first place, or the fact that some people go through 8 consultants from ECAN before they get the consent considered by one person, and it goes through the process, and yet the money machine is running the whole time. So we just need to think about the implications of what we're agreeing to. I agree with John. We have a policy. We should try and meet the policy. But I don't think we should be giving carte blanche to staff to actually charge effectively full cost recovery without actually putting them under a bit of blowtorch to look at efficiencies.
First of all, it's nowhere near a full cost recovery because we're only at 59. Well, even if we put it up to 4.7, we're only at 59%. So let's be real about that. And the other thing I want to remind everybody is this is based on good data that we've got over the last 3 years doing the sustainable consents delivery to get us to a better place. It's the real figures that a staff have come back with and told us that they need to sort it out and to not fall into that hole again. So I take that really seriously. I'm not interested in putting up people's costs all the time, but this is about what we can do in this building. And so that's why, I think the 14.1 is the most prudent thing to do. Yes, it's tough for everybody involved, but it's the most prudent thing to do. But so I think it's, unfair to, point things out like we've got to be better. Applications have to be better. You've heard from our staff that applications aren't good enough when they come in the building. That's why it takes a lot of time. People who pay for consultants to do that, that's on them, and that's on the consultants who charge them. That's not our problem. So I just think it's really important to remind ourselves of where this has come from. This is not like plucked out of the air, guessing at it. It's based on good data that's come in the door over the last few years to get to this point to make a good decision about how we do this for our organisation. I don't know if anyone else had their hand up, but I know, okay.
Can I just make a comment as chair?
Well, the thing is,
related to audit,
we haven't got much time left,
audit
people.
finance and risk. It is very clear in this report that the result of going with the 4.7 is going to result in a budget deficit of 1.6 million. And the options are either we have sort of to find savings for that 1.6 million, or use reserves to offset it. Our reserves are currently $13 million in debt. And I think people need to be realistic about it, as you say. And last year, when we got into try to get her out of this consent issue, we had to allocate an extra $3 or $4 million. So it's kind of, or more.
I know that, Grant. That's good. Dion, I'm keen to go to you.
Yeah, I wanted just to support Craig and what he was saying about the split before when we had, last time this came to us. But the way that you've presented it today is even more different than it's an evolution to what me and Craig talked about. And I actually support that way you're wanting to approach it. This is the plan here, but in this particular case, this is the other scenario. So doing a bit of scenario analysis in the consultation to show people that there are other options. But I do actually support what you're saying, because it always comes back to me about the contract that we have with our communities, which is our long-term plan. And in our long-term plan, we've already consulted on these numbers and these metrics for this cost recovery. So, and that's where I always default back to. The contract that we have with our communities ultimately is the long-term plan. And I mentioned that in that meeting as well. So I do support that. But in terms of the consenting and the efficiencies and stuff, I'm just going to have 2 seconds here. At some stage, I think it might be useful to understand what the billable hours are and those cost recoveries on the billable hours, because that's where we can start at a governance level talking about percentages of time and everything. But for my members over there, for my other governors, you just voted against something that actually does, our submission supports making efficiencies for consenting processes. I'll just leave that with you guys.
Okay, look, we're going to run out of time if we keep going around. I know people had other comments to make. If there's a preferred option for this, like I've said, I'm with 14.1 to stick to our guns to get there, but I don't know how everyone else thinks. So I'm happy to go around the room really quickly and you just yell out whether you're 14.1 or 4.7, or have you got another solution?
No, it was pretty much what Dion just said. I was going to make a suggestion, given the time, that for consultation, from what we've heard, is that we go out with LTP year 2, which is what councillors gave us original direction before Christmas, but that we actually show that an alternative could be, and it could look like this. And this is the impact of that versus the proposal, which is the 14.1, which is what it takes to achieve what you wanted in the LTP year 2 and to achieve policy. If people are broadly comfortable with that, and I think that's broadly what we've heard, then we've got our consultation direction and we can bring that back in the consultation documents to you. Does that work?
Yep, I'm happy with that. I don't know, looking around the room with these nods. Yep. I know not everyone's going to be happy, but we've got to move on.
But it should flush out something at least that councillors can then consider.
And it also gives the alternative that people can say yes to. If they'd rather do that, then we get that feedback.
Yeah. I'm just conscious of time because we do have the PT information, and I know you've got a hard finish on this. Some councillors.
I know some of us have to leave, but I look through, like, there's not other big decisions to make. It's more just feedback.
This was the one, that's why we put it at the front. Yeah, the gnarly one. Yep.
Yeah, John.
People are comfortable, move on.
Could you just talk through that again, please, just to get it clear in my head?
So our statement of proposal is that these are the fees and charges that we would need to increase, and this is what it would look like in order to deliver on 66%, which is in policy, and that's what we've already said in year 2 of the long-term plan. So to Dion's point, that's what we've already agreed. But this is what that agreement looks like now in fees and charges. So that's the bit we're consulting on. An alternative would be that we didn't step it up quite so much so quickly, and that could look like this. This is what it would look like to ratepayers, this is what it would look like to users of the service. So we do put in that second option, but we're very clear that the proposal is to stick to Plan A, year 2, policy. An option is this. Now, people might come back and say, actually, give us something in the middle. Yeah, I mean, and that's then something that we can work through during deliberations with councillors. So if that sits comfortably enough with everybody, then that at least gives us our instruction for the consultation work.
Thank you for that. And I guess in my mind, I'm looking at a 7 or 8%, something in the middle, which would be a 2-step without going over the top, but minimising the effect on rates. But that's for debate.
We could still do that in the consultation. You could say 14.1 is the proposal, but there's a 7 option and there's a 4.7 option, something like that. Yeah, but it also needs to show what it would need to be in the next 2 years after that to get to the target. I think that's important. Yeah.
Just as a point of clarification, we are talking about a cost recovery band of 60 to 80%. Where has 66 come into this?
On the LTP.
Oh, okay.
It was a target in the LTP. Yeah.
Why are we still referring to a band of 60 to 80%?
I don't know, actually.
Then?
60 to 80 is what's in your policy, your revenue and financing policy, and that's where the 66 came from. It was to get you into that policy bracket in this second year of the LTP. So that's a different conversation. If the 60 to 80 isn't right, that's a whole separate consultation on policy for a later
So
date.
Claire asked, is there another target after 66?
Yep.
74.
74.
74.
in the
And what year was that meant to be achieved in? Year 3. Okay. Yep.
Are we happy to move on
Yep.
to PT?
I am.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm just going to hand straight over to Sonia on this. Hopefully this will be relatively easy compared to the last one. And then, as I say, we just need a little bit of time at the end because we'll share documents with you and we need to get your feedback on them.
Okay, fingers crossed relatively quick. Hello, Council. There's just 3 differences to highlight here from the last conversation. If I take you back to the 4th of December, was the last time we talked through what was going to go through in the consultation for public transport. So 3 differences are we've now got a 3-zone fare option. So as you remember, that's kind of reverting back to the 3 zones we had previously prior to the trial. We do see a cost difference for the targeted rate for the Darfield Rolleston. So you'll see there it's increased there to 140, 178. Sorry, it shouldn't be quite so specific on that slide. And that's an increase from originally when we came to you, we thought it would be around $68 to $96. The reason for that cost increase is we've gone to the operator to get a costing for that service. And because of the dead running, and in layman's terms, that's because of the getting the bus from the depot out to Darfield, getting it back home again, that's where you see those costs increase. So that's for the driver hours and the kilometres. And the last one is we talked about the potential for improvements between Selwyn directs in the city. We've done some more work and analysis on where that need and demand really is, and it's actually on that Rolleston City direct service. So we did put an extra trip on the Lincoln City route. So this really is focusing the improvements there on Rolleston, but you'll see there that the targeted rate is shared by Rolleston residents, Prebbleton, Lincoln, Springston, Burnham Camp. So they all pay that because of that urban rate, but it will be the Rolleston City direct service that has the improvement. So just throwing it out for any questions.
What's the total cost of those trials, sorry?
For the the Darfield, Rolleston. So original cost for just the peak service only, we thought it was going to be about 164,000. The revised operator cost is 238,000. For the peak service plus the midday service, originally we thought it was going to be, oh God, I've wrote the number wrong, 235, I think, K. The revised cost is 343,000. And because it's a small target base, essentially that has a big increase for each person who's paying, each household, sorry.
Thank you. Just a question, I guess, in our previous conversations, we were either talking staying the same or two zones, and had reached kind of a point on two zones. So I'm just wondering the rationale to the conversation about three zones.
Stu, can I throw this one out to you? We've got Stu online.
Sure. The three zones option was introduced to account for the longer trips out to Darfield, to get better service recovery on those longer routes, and this is driven from the private revenue expectations from government.
So are we saying only the Darfield route, or would others be implicated in the three zone space?
At the moment, the Darfield to City service is the only route that would be in Zone 3 and was the only route previously in Zone 3.
Thanks for this. Just in terms of the document that goes out, or the draft, can you ensure that there's a really good graphic that explains, the route, the zone differences? That would be really good, with those cost figures attached to that. That would be great. Thank you.
What's the fallback position if the community doesn't agree to, or doesn't support the increase in targeted rate for the Darfield bus?
So it's a brand new service, so at the moment it doesn't exist. So essentially the third option would be, yeah. So sorry, this is, yeah.
Just one on the total mobility. There was some discussion earlier on that we were going to target that collection for the, I think it was over a mil, wasn't it? 1.2 mil or something, from the areas that get up. Is that going to affect Waimakariri ratepayers? From that? No? Okay, thank you. Somebody's shaking their head over the back.
Any other? Oh, sorry. Oh, go Stuart.
So it will affect Waimakariri Urban, because they have access to total mobility.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep, Joe.
So in terms of the costings from the operator, did we just go to one operator, or did we go to?
At the moment, we've gone to one operator, because they own the unit that it would essentially be put into. So they kind of get the first refusal. What we're doing at the moment is just exploring what this might look like. If we were to secure the funding, we'd then put it into kind of a more operational process to review what the options are. This is kind of, if I'm honest, worst case scenario, because obviously ideally you don't want a bus coming from the Hallswell depot out to Darfield.
Yep. Oh, Stuart, did you? No, you put your hand down.
Just what Sonia said. So if the operator is able to recruit a driver who lives out the Darfield way, then they would store the bus out that way, and the cost would get reduced.
Cool. We've got any other questions on that? No? Do you want to carry on? Yep.
Cool. Thank you. So I'm going to move over these, and Ross's slides are very self-explanatory, so I'm going to move over those as well, which is around the community conversation and the consultation. The one bit is just a reminder to councillors that the consultation document is to consult on the annual plan and fees and charges. It's not part of the same thing, if you like. So we're just using one document because we're out at the same time.
Oh, there's two parts to it. Yep.
Two parts to one document, yep. So then I just quickly want to hand over to Kate just in terms of how councillors will give feedback on these documents.
Kia ora, councillors. Just very quickly in terms of getting feedback on the consultation document and the draft annual plan, you will get a copy of both of those documents hopefully by end of Friday.
Teresa's fast
That's, yeah, we're going to pull those together as quickly as we can given the guidance that we've received today. So hopefully by the end of Friday you'll have those. We're asking you, we've got a week for you to provide feedback, so we're working in pretty tight timeframes to then incorporate that feedback and get those documents to you for the meeting on the 26th of February for adoption. So what we're going to do is ask you to provide feedback in a shared Word document that will be on your SharePoint. It's the same process that we used for the LTP feedback. There will be a form there. It will ask you to direct the page and the paragraph and what changes you would like to see. There's also an option for any councillor that agrees with that particular feedback just to put their initials, which is a really efficient way for staff to see the the level of support for a particular change. The instructions for providing that feedback and finding that document and doing that are here, and we will also email it to you. There will be a link to your SharePoint site, and then there's step-by-step how you open the document, convert it to a Word document, and that just saves automatically. Everything that is on the screen, all councillors will be able to see that, so everyone will be able to see the feedback as it comes through. And that process is just to allow us to do what we need to do at the tail end to incorporate all those changes as efficiently and as quickly as possible. That's me.
Yeah, Grant?
Not a comment about the consultation document itself, but a question about the 9.9% proposed versus the 15.5% in the LTP. And what I'm wanting to know is what that 5.5% difference in the current proposed versus the LTP. What is that made up of? Obviously, there's a substantial proportion of that to do with PT. I'd like to know what that proportion is. I'm saying this because we are in deep trouble with our general reserves debt.
It's right here.
Where?
At the back. And we had this in December, or November maybe. So 1.9% comes from public transport rates.
Okay.
Anyway, it's there. And there's 1.5% of other reductions. So that's answers that. If you've got any other questions, you can come back to us.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yep.
Just one more comment that I meant to make. Just a reminder for everyone that the draft annual plan is pretty much year 2 of the long-term plan. So there are no big changes in there. There are some tweaks, but there are no big changes in terms of what is in the long-term plan and what is in the annual plan. So I encourage you to focus your review on this consultation document to make sure that what is in that consultation document reflects the guidance that you gave us over the 6 months at the end of last year.
Dion?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a bit pushed back on that, but there are some substantial changes because we haven't got the funding for public transport. So I just want us to be very careful with that language, that there are substantial changes in terms of what we can deliver, especially in the public transport space. So I don't want us to be under any illusions that, we've not got anything extra new, but we are pulling back and not doing some things. So that needs to be highlighted to our community because, again, that is our contract in the LTP to the community. So we just need to be very careful about how we do language that.
And when you read the forward that's in there, that's what it says. So you're right. I think you meant big increases of work programs and stuff, but there is a significant reduction. You're right. Ian?
Just going back to a comment Peter made earlier in the previous debate about the general rate rise. When you look at the reductions that have been taken to get from 15.5 to 9.9, they're heavily skewed towards the people who pay public transport rates, which means that actually the rural ratepayers, Peter, our ratepayers, will still be paying close to 15%.
Thanks, Ian. No, I think we're going to finish.
That's correct. Yeah, I raised that issue about the debt level for general reserves, and we tried at the LTP to bring that down a little bit. I think we need to do it this time round. So if people can give a bit of thought about what percentage would be palatable to kind of bring down this debt issue that we've got.
Yep, Peter.
Councillor Mackenzie, in terms of his numbers, is right, then that's unacceptable to me. In terms of 15% rate rise in the rural communities, 14%, well, I'm totally opposed to that.
Oh, that's good because people will get their chance to have that debate on the 25th, and then obviously later once we've done consultation when we make the final decisions. But to give staff guidance, this is what we agreed to, and we've been through it quite a few briefings to get to that 9.9. So that's where the consultation document's going to be at, and people shouldn't be surprised about that. Yes, there'll be changes that we can make post the consultation and leading into May, June. That's cool, but this is what we had to do to get the document out the door, to give our community a chance to give us feedback.
Just a brief reflection on those comments, Craig. I think I was living in the expectation up until Christmas that we would have a discussion on some of the other issues that we're spending money on, in the hope that we could claw back on that effective rate, the effective rate rise, and we haven't. We've been solely focused on the issues that have been brought forward to us, which have been public transport and a couple of other issues, and we haven't had a debate about some other areas where we could have cut the budget.
But we did make a $2 million cut at the end of the last LTP as well, just to be conscious of that. So that's already been taken into account as well. So, yeah. Vicky?
Just, am I right in thinking in the annual plan consultation document there will be the usual examples of different properties and what the rates will look like in terms of percentage rise?
Yeah, because the PT's a bit complicated, it was very difficult for us to actually do the sample properties, because if you're here, you'll be paying a bit of this and so on. But we will have them in supporting information. So we'll be leading to example properties. Yep. So we will have that. And then that can also be available in the back pocket notes, how we do for councillors normally, just some key points. Yep, that will be linked to all of that. So councillors will have access to your own information as well in your own areas. Yep.
Hey, thanks everyone, and look forward to getting the document and going into the Google document to see the comments. So thank you. And that worked well last time, so thank you. I think that's it for the day, and for most of us. Some of us have got a few more meetings now, but we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.